Just imagine, you're on a long road trip with your friends or family, and the only thing you can listen to is the radio. You find what you think is a good radio station, only to discover as the miles go by, you start to hear the same artist or maybe even the same song within a short period of time. You get frustrated with this radio station, so you turn it to something else, only to realize that the same tired music keeps following you, everywhere. Luckily, in today's day and age, we can rely on a streaming service such as Apple Music or Spotify to save us from that hell, where anything we want to listen to is in the palm of our hands. However, this video will be addressing the problem that still remains, and that is the lack of variety on FM radio stations. Some other things that I'll be addressing in this video includes the following. How musically sheltered would you be if you simply stuck to listening to what's on the radio? Which genre of music is the least creative in their daily playlist? And maybe most importantly, who is to blame for the lack of originality and creativity on the radio?
See that? A fun coupon!
So some of you may be asking, Joey, is there really even an issue? I mean, how repetitive are these radio stations really being that it deserves this much thought? To quantify my theory with actual numbers, I visited the websites of 3 popular radio stations within my area, all from a different genre. In going to their recently played page, I could document everything that the station had played within the last 24 hours and break it down into how often a single artist was played, some of the most played individual songs, and any other oddball occurrences of overexposure. Within my research, I found even more than I was bargaining for, with a distinct trait of each genre emerging as I dove into the patterns. First was Kiss 107.1, a station based in Cincinnati that plays mostly pop and hip-hop, and is billed as featuring the top hits. What I found was Sabrina Carpenter is currently the pop radio darling with 16 plays in a 24-hour period, with her Bed Kim song tying Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us for the most song plays at 10. Shortly behind those 2 songs was Gracie Abrams aka Taylor Swift Jr. with 9 plays on her song That's So True. What I found to be extremely bizarre is that despite there being 87 different artists within this time frame across 224 songs, Taylor Swift herself never makes an appearance on what's billed as Cincinnati's #1 hit station. Especially when her detractors are always quick to say she's being shoved down our throats when they show her for 2 seconds on a Chiefs game. She may be a huge artist in terms of discussion and ticket sales to her Eras tour that just concluded, but somehow we do not find the biggest superstar in popular music being played on this radio station.
Nobody noticed my new aesthetic.
Overall though, this station mixes a good amount of new hits with familiar favorites of the 2000s and forward. So not a terrible variety for this station, but it does get worse. Next, I checked out B105, a country station based out of Cincinnati, to find much less variety of artists overall compared to the pop hit station, but also a huge gender gap that makes country radio quite a sausage fest. Out of 74 artists played within a 24-hour period on this country music station, only 7 female artists made an appearance on their own, with just another 8 instances of sometimes the same girl being either part of a group or in a duet with a guy. In this day and age, I personally feel like women make more interesting music and offer much more in terms of their lyrics and songwriting on their own, but yet they're at such a disadvantage on country radio. First one that comes to mind is Morgan Wade. You mean that none of her songs can get a single play in 24 hours? Meanwhile, doofuses like Jason Aldean and the racist, drunk, chair thrower Morgan Wallen pumps out the same sludge over and over, with the latter making an appearance once every 12 songs. The only saving grace for the country radio station is that they do know how to find and promote newer artists and newer songs, something that our next test subject is struggling with. The final radio station I decided to browse through was
1027 WEBN.
But anyway, this is a rock station that's also based out of Cincinnati. Now, while the male artist overwhelming the rock station was even more prevalent than the country station, with only 6 out of 230 songs featuring a female singer, that's honestly to be expected with this genre, even if some of the most interesting current rock acts are female-led at the moment. But as I mentioned just a second ago, rock radio's identity crisis is that they do not know how to promote new bands and new artists that will stand the test of time like the ones that they so heavily rely on. Because amongst the steady diet of Metallica, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, and a slew of the same greatest hits you've already been hearing your entire life, you're only going to be shown a new crop of a few artists, including Falling in Reverse, Shinedown, Jelly Roll, and resurgences from Linkin Park and Papa Roach with their 2 respective new songs that are getting the highly sought after rare push from rock radio. What rock radio does do well is their ability to showcase the most different bands or artists of this whole test group, with 97 different artists in a 24-hour period, compared to pop having 87 and country having 74. So now that we have some of this information available to us, it's time to decide which genre of music is the least creative in terms of their daily radio playlists. In my opinion, pop radio doesn't really do anything too egregious, and I found them to have the most to offer listeners overall, even if they somehow omitted the biggest pop star on the planet within their 24-hour window. Country radio stations could use a lot less dudes with blingy jeans and backwards ball caps, but they are typically successful at showcasing new talent. Rock radio, on the other hand, has a lot less creativity in exposing us to new, worthwhile music, and cannot seem to get past how strong their past is. It's an interesting problem to have. With this being said, I'm going to let you decide down in the comments which genre needs the biggest overhaul, and I'm already looking forward to hearing your thoughts. As that research is now wrapped up, I've given the issue of the lack of variety itself enough of a foundation that even if you don't listen to the radio, you can hopefully acknowledge that some FM radio stations kind of suck in their own ways. But now the question is, who is to blame for that? So as I myself was considering the answer to this question, I had a feeling that you couldn't just place the blame on the DJs themselves. Because I'm sure they're music lovers. I mean, they probably don't want to hear the same songs multiple times a day, day after day. So I took to Reddit to pose the question to those within the industry that could help me figure out their influence on what gets played. I simply asked the question, FM radio DJs, how much freedom do you have in selecting your daily playlist? I was astonished at some of the replies from those who have many years of experience within the role. This Redditor says that at a commercial station there is 0% freedom, with the music director being the one who schedules the music with certain types of songs being played at strategic times. I've got to say, this kind of pulled the curtain back and showed to me how being a radio DJ probably isn't as sweet as I initially thought it would be, even for a music lover. I assumed there were certain songs that they did have to play, but also held out hope that they could flavor the playlist with their own picks every once in a while. I guess not. The same Reddit user added later on that commercial radio is not about showing your personality. It's about making a profit the same as any other business. If the numbers say playing an 80s song at 9:10 a.m. keeps people listening longer than a 2000 song, that's what happens. Luckily, there are radio stations such as the ones that are privately funded, are college stations, or just have no corporate or commercial agendas to push that allow their DJs more freedom to play what they want. Obviously, if you're going to be listening to the radio on a long road trip or while you're working around the house, these are the stations that you need to seek out. Those stations will provide you with much more variety and are more likely to introduce you to new artists that you can build a meaningful relationship with between you and their music. So ultimately, it may be less about who's to blame for the lack of variety on the radio, and it might be more about what is to blame, and that is the priority to make a profit. Now obviously, if you're running a business such as a radio station that needs to make profits through advertising to survive, it looks like the only way to do that is to play the game and sell out with a Morgan Wallen song every 10 minutes. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun to me, so I don't think a career as a radio DJ is in my future. But I do think talking about music on YouTube is in my future, so if you want to be along on that ride with me, please subscribe here to Last Few Spins and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. By the way, my name is Joey, and I want to thank you all for tuning into this video and diving into the patterns of FM radio with me. Your time is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.